Welcome back to Turf Talk Election Edition. Vance, the nation is voting for president today, but you and I have already shifted our focus to another ballot-worthy consideration.
Yeah, Horse of the Year. Going into the Breeders' Cup Classic on Saturday, I thought this was going to be the race that was going to decide it. Afterwards, I gave my opinion, you gave your opinion. It seems like the wider electorate probably isn't going to follow my decision of choosing Arrogate after his victory over California Chrome. I think you're not going to choose that either.
No, you're right. Yeah, we're on differing sides. We will lay out, though, that we agree it is down to the top two from the Classic.
Yes, it's the best 3-year-old colt against the best older horse for sure.
Right, and Arrogate did earn my vote for champion 3-year-old male. No question there. Nyquist will be on the ballot as a finalist, but that will go to him, as will champion older male go to California Chrome, even in defeat of the Classic. And then Horse of the Year comes down to those two. If the NTRA poll gives any hint of who will win, it looks like it will be California Chrome. And to me, it's a balance of, I think Arrogate showed he was the better horse. The better season, though, I do think was Chrome's.
There's an argument to be made at that. I mean, when you say better season, that's definitely you're saying it was a longer season, and that's for sure. And Arrogate only making 2 stakes appearances all year, but he did them in fantastic fashion. And it's just a different philosophy. I thought that, California Chrome was the heavy favorite to be named champion older male, but he still had to beat Frosted and Melatonin. Arrogate had to win the Classic to be champion 3-year-old colt. They both did their jobs in that respect, but I saw the better horse win on the Classic. I think he's the best horse of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue he's the better horse. Some consternation maybe over Victor's ride, but look, from a Brisnet perspective, and I didn't listen going into the Classic, even getting 2 times the price, Arrogate had already run the fastest race of the year. It wasn't Frosted in the Met Mile, wasn't Chrome in the Pacific Classic. My employer got it right. I somehow bungled it, but nevertheless, I'm not going to stand here and argue that, Chrome's the better horse and would win this race X more times than Arrogate did. I think we got a pretty honest response. Not saying Chrome would never win, but I do think the better horse won. I am going the season route for my argument for Horse of the Year, though. When Go Sapper was Horse of the Year off just 4 starts, and only 2 of them were grade 1s, they were at least all stakes. And that year, there to me was no other alternative. Smarty Jones was a finalist, but he closed up shop before the second half of the year. So you sort of had 2 truncated campaigns. This year, the alternative had been butting heads against the best all year in the handicap division or the international handicap division, and that's what gives him the nod. But to me, like last year, I wasn't really passionate one way or the other. I thought the choices were obvious, and I feel the same this way. And maybe I'm more comfortable with that since Chrome is going to win.
Yeah, for
I don't need to argue it.
Just as for me, historical perspective, I think head-to-head matters, and in this particular instance, Arrogate is the winner. And I'm going to write about this later in the week on the blog, but there seems to be a real great disconnect between the results of the Breeders' Cup Classic in this decade and how people vote in Eclipse Awards. I mean, this race kind of resembles now the Blame Zenyatta battle from 6 years ago, where Blame beat Zenyatta on the square at Churchill Downs in the Classic, didn't win Horse of the Year honors. If American Pharaoh had happened to lose at Keeneland last year, he still would have been Horse of the Year off his Triple Crown victories. And then we had a couple winners in the middle of the decade in Mucho Macho Man and Fort Larned, winning the Classic impressively, but yet not winning champion older male honors. I mean, for me, there just seems to be this huge disconnect between what many people consider the most lucrative and important weight for age race we have in this country, and whether they want to take those results to heart. They're not doing it, obviously, at the polls.
Right. Yeah, that fair criticism. You go back to Curlin in 07, sort of that clinched Horse of the Year for him when he won. Then you had the synthetic Ravens Pass, then a female won, and lost Horse of the Year despite that to another 3-year-old filly who defeated males. And then after that, there's definitely a classic drought for the winners. And Blame, to me, I voted for him, and that did sort of set a precedence that this race isn't as important as maybe it used to be from a Horse of the Year perspective. I'll argue though that at least to me, Blame was the choice because he had beaten older males throughout the year, and for some reason that Gold Cup was held against him. But whereas this year Chrome did the same, he had won the Dubai World Cup, Pacific Classic, etc. So he had done it throughout the year at least, and it wasn't up to the Classic to be a be-all, end-all. But I see your point.
Yeah, like I said, I'm going to write about this, and it just seems very strange and odd that we've put so much focus on this particular race. We enjoy these matchups tremendously, but then once the results are in and majority of people don't necessarily like what they saw, they're going to totally ignore it. And
Yeah.
I personally, I have a problem with that, but it's nothing I can do about it. It's other people's opinions
Yeah.
I've got to respect, so that's the way it is.
Well, for me, a couple seconds changed the voting as well. I wouldn't have voted for her, but I think if Songbird had won, she'd probably end up Horse of the Year. And if Tepin had won, I would be voting for her, but she didn't. So
it's an interesting. I hadn't even thought about
yeah,
that. But,
tough nose for Songbird. Again, I would not be voting for her if she had won. She didn't defeat males, but I think she would be Horse of the Year if she had won.
That's very interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. And just building on that, it was very interesting that 5 of the main star horses going into the weekend all met defeat. We had Cal Chrome, we had Songbird, we had Flincher, Tepin, and one other I'm just briefly forgetting at this moment. But it was a terrific Breeders' Cup, thrilling races all around. Lady Eli, thank you. It was terrific Breeders' Cup, thrilling finishes all around, but to see all 5 of those fan favorites go down in defeat was very surprising to me.
Yeah, but in some ways maybe the baton passed, because whether you believed it or not, from out of the Travers, I think Arrogate, assuming he's able to compete a full season at 4, whatever that means for him, being by Unbridled Song. I mean, he's amazing.
We could be looking at another Ghost Zapper type campaign in 2017.
Yeah, I mean,
and
only 3 starts wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I wrote about this yesterday. We got the times are changing. We got to get used to these stealth campaigns. If you've got the horse, if you got the right trainer who can do it successfully, you're going to see more Arrogate type campaigns in the future. And you have to just respect the form sometimes and just give them the honors that they possibly deserve.
All right, last one. I think there's some toss-ups in terms of Eclipse Awards, but the only one I think that is a legitimate discussion involving actually really good horses, Highland Reel or Flincher for male turf.
Right now, I'm leaning towards Flincher just because he was American-based. He did a lot during the course of the year. Unless the American-based horses aren't a top flight, then yeah, I'll pick a European horse off of one stakes victory. But Flincher did build up a pretty nice resume, and then even though he did lose head-to-head against Highland Reel, I'm going to stick with the American-based horses generally. But I'm still going to give this category a little bit more thought for sure in the coming weeks.
And I'm on Highland Reel, even though I just lamented Blame's Gold Cup being held against him. He actually got it done in the Breeders' Cup. Flincher, the Joe Hirsch to Ecto, who is nowhere in the Breeders' Cup, smarts a little bit. And Mondia Least, who won the Million, one of our top turf races, was last in the Breeders' Cup turf. And to me, I just think, well, what does that say about the overall quality of the division? And Highland Reel came here and blitzed them. So I need to think about it too, but that's what's going through my head.
There's probably no wrong answer in that particular division in my book, so have at it.
All right. Well, 2 good horses for sure either way, and Flincher's off to start. I haven't seen what Highland Reel's doing next year.
He might be headed to Hong Kong for a title defense. Return engagement.
All right, and you're headed as well.
I'm headed to Hong Kong. It should be fun.
All right, we'll talk about that certainly as it approaches. And I'm sure more Eclipse Award talk too as these divisions sort themselves out. And we'll talk next week on Turf Talk.